What's up, guys? We are back. Gonna talk college football all year long. I'm joined with the guys, Trent and Alec. What's up, man? Long off season, but we're here. We made it.
Boys are back.
Almost there, baby.
Yeah, man. Let's get right into it, guys. We're gonna give war predictions, games. Week 0 is finally here. Nothing exciting, but we have one decent game. That is Notre Dame and Navy in Ireland. Pretty cool. I don't know if this is the first time they've done something like this, but the fact that it's in Ireland makes me want to watch. I'm kind of curious what kind of stadium they're going to have. So, with that said, Alec, let's start with you first, man. What are your expectations for that game? And remember, they have Sam Hartman this year from Wake Forest. You brought me on him last year. He had a really good year. Obviously, a couple tough losses, but I'm very high on Sam Hartman. I think he's going to have a really good year. Marcus Freeman in his second year as head coach. I think we could say it was kind of disappointing last year, some of the games that he lost, but I expect him to bounce back, and I think he's going to do better this year. So, what do you think about all that?
I think that I have high expectations of Notre Dame this year. Last year, I think they started 0-3 or like 1-4, 1-3 in the first four
Mm-hmm.
games, something like that. It was a like really rough start. We were all worried about Freeman, and then I'm pretty sure they won out or won 8 of their last nine, something crazy, and they finished like 9-3 or 8-4. So they had a great, strong finish to the season, and one of their main issues that they had was quarterback play. So I think the quarterback was the guy who was there, who's now in Alabama, who's was garbage. I forgot his name. Having Hartman come there is, I think, what the missing piece, the final missing piece that they needed to really compete. And I would have an expectation for them to maybe be there towards the end of the year. But I'm looking at their schedule and they have some really tough games. This first game is not a game that they should be looking past, just considering that Navy, um, they run whatever triple option, like super heavy run offense, and that regardless of what teams they play, that always gives the team trouble. So considering that's your first game of the season and you haven't been able to put a lot of your practice into reality, and since that's such an obscure offense to defend, I wonder if that may give them problems early. But they got one of the most accurate passers in college football at quarterback, and I'm sure that their offensive line will be superior to Navy's defensive line. So I'd expect them to win this game. But moving forward, I was just looking now. They play Ohio State, they play Clemson, they play USC, all three top 10 teams through season. Um, but fortunately they're not in a conference. So if they could win a couple of those games and maybe lose one, I think that they can have their name up there at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's a very good point. That is a tough schedule. Like I said, the fact that this is in Ireland and the fact, and for some people who are just getting into the sport, it's really cool, man. It's not you get to see this every day. But Trent, what do you think about Sam Hartman and the Notre Dame team this year, man?
Kind of piggybacking off what Alex said is that I think the main issue with them last season was quarterback play. They were super inconsistent. It was a roller coaster. They had Pine for the most part. They had Buckner, I think Buckner went to Alabama. Um, but the reason why they had such a slow start was because they weren't really getting a lot of production out of their quarterbacks. Um, and then I think they ended up rallying, getting some momentum the second half of the season, getting some wins. But if they had a quarterback last season, they probably would have been, I don't want to say, a 10-win team, but they would have looked a lot better. Now with Hartman, and Hartman's got to be, at the very least, a top 10 quarterback in college football this year. He's a veteran presence. He's been around. Um, he's going to do well in Notre Dame. Like I promise, he's going to do well in Notre Dame. And last season, they had a really good run game. They had three running backs that were all pretty good: Diggs, Esteem, and Tyree. And they were averaging at least 4.5 yards a carry. Um, the only big loss they have on offense now is they lost Michael Mayer, who was the tight end, baby Gronk. So they're going to need to find some production from the receivers and tight ends, but Hartman should help there. And I think I would definitely expect second year under Freeman. Uh, Notre Dame has a much better season this year, especially compared to last year.
Yeah.
Um, I think Hartman is going to make a very, very big difference. And like Alex said, you can't really sleep on Navy because it's a triple option team, and triple option teams are very, very unpredictable. You can prepare for them all you want, but really you never know until game day. But they're favored by 20. I do expect them to win, but it's a tough schedule, but they're good. I think they're going to compete. And you're going to see a much better Notre Dame team this year.
Yeah. Well said, man. Sam Hartman is a really good player. I'm kind of curious to see what Marcus Freeman does in his second year. Alec mentioned it. They did have a strong end of the season last year, so let's see if they bounce back. But yeah, I agree. I think they'll win, but I don't think it's going to be as big as people think. I think 20 points is a decent line. Let's get to the other game. Not that it's exciting, but more for this one team and their expectations this season. That's San Jose State against USC. I think we all know who's going to win that game. But more importantly, let's talk about USC, man. Last year, we ended the pod, and you guys had some pretty strong comments for Lincoln Riley. Trent wasn't willing to go on that bus yet, but Alec obviously said that he's on bum Rushmore, and he's overrated, so it's extra, et cetera. Listen, this is the year, man. This is the second year. It's not his first year anymore. He's got, I think we use the word generational quarterback a lot, but I think he's up there as one of the better college quarterbacks we've seen in a long time in terms of NFL prospect wise. And this guy is coming off the Heisman last year. He arguably has the best receiving core in college football. Offensively, they're going to be great. Defensively, can they take another step? Trent, I'll let you go first, man. What are your expectations for USC this year? And would you agree that Lincoln Riley better at least get to the final?
Oh yeah, if Riley at the very least doesn't win the Pac-12 this year, then I'm out on him. Like I'm sorry. He's got no more excuses. I gave him the first year excuse last season, even with his loaded team. I'm not gonna give him that this season. I mean, Caleb Williams is hands down best quarterback in college football, consensus number one overall pick. He has so much talent around him. It's just hard to see a scenario where this team doesn't win a Pac-12 and eventually go to their college football playoff. But we saw it last season. I mean, they lost games they shouldn't have lost. They lost in a bowl game they probably shouldn't have lost. So I don't know. I mean, I like Lincoln at Oklahoma, but Alec always said he never really won anything, and he didn't. Even with all the guys he had there. So he had three generational quarterbacks at Oklahoma. And he probably has the best one here at USC. So there's no excuse.
Yeah.
He on paper he is the best team in the Pac-12. On paper he's got a top 5 team in the country. So this is it. This is the line for me. If they can't win a Pac-12, then I don't know what to say about Lincoln.
Yeah, Alec. Look, he took over for Stoops at Oklahoma. As we all know, Trent mentioned earlier, they've had Baker Mayfield who won a Heisman, didn't accomplish anything. They had Kyler Murray, won a Heisman, one of the most athletic quarterbacks I've seen in college football, didn't win Heisman. He had Jalen Hurts. He did not win the Heisman, but he was coming off a Heisman a couple of years ago, was awesome, didn't accomplish much. And now he has Caleb Williams, who won the Heisman last year, and now he's back this year. And a lot of people have high expectations for him, man. But I'll give you the floor. What do you think about all this?
Yeah, I mean, there are pros. Obviously, he's one of the greatest offensive minds in college football. He's very good at developing quarterbacks into NFL caliber. Not only that they can compete, but actually go in there and make an impact like all these quarterbacks have. Even the improvement of Jalen Hurts, like you mentioned, I mean, he was great at Alabama, but he came right over there and they kind of developed him into something a little bit more. And we've seen how well he's done in the pros. So he did have Caleb Williams in his last year at Oklahoma. And he basically left Oklahoma out to dry for this grand opportunity, which was supposed to be a slam dunk. They're going to win. I think this is his third year, or maybe it's his second year. I don't know. But I know maybe last year was their first year. So you can't get too down on them for not making a playoff, but they should have won their conference. They lost to Utah twice last year. And they kind of lose in all the big games that they play. They lost their bowl game to Tulane, if I'm not mistaken. So, there's just something about these big games where they haven't been able to come through. And that's been a recurring theme for Link Riley, even going back to when he was at Oklahoma. Difference this year is, yeah, they have the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, but it's really the closest thing that you can find to a super team, in my opinion, in college football, uh, with a combination of their talent that they've recruited and also their coaching. They have Cliff Kingsbury now as their offensive coordinator.
That's right. Yeah.
That's a huge move for them. And prior to Cliff Kingsbury going to the pros, he was, he had dynamic offenses in college, and even though Texas Tech when he was coaching there, they didn't win many games, but he was great as an OC as well. So it just doesn't, they should be disappointed if they don't win the national championship. In my opinion, I mean, they should expect to be there and they should expect to be in the playoff. The issue that I see with their team is their defensive effort in some of these games. And they have this defensive coordinator. His name's Alex Grinch, and he's kind of like Riley, came up under Riley. He brought him over from Oklahoma. And he's kept him here at USC, and there was a lot of complaints about their defense this year. They decided to keep him on. So, there are some other coaches who have had problems in the past with letting go of people that they've brought up. And, if their defense is not playing at an elite level, they're not going to be able to win in the playoff when they're playing against other explosive offenses. So I do expect them to be there. I mean, it just really would make no sense if that they don't win their conference and they don't go all the way. So that is my expectation for them. And if they don't, I mean, I think it's like a cold, like a concrete case that it's not going to work over there with like.
Yeah. You said one thing, and they have Cliff Kingsbury. Obviously, he didn't have the best stint in the NFL, but just a couple quarterbacks for people who don't know who he coached in college. You're right. He's one of the best defensive minds. And he had Johnny Manziel won the Heisman. He had Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech, played awesome there. I mean, he's coached some real talent, so he knows what he's doing. So you're right, man. They really have everything. Trent, is it a stretch to say that they have arguably the best receiving core in college football?
No, that's not a stretch. And it's also kind of crazy to think about because they lost Jordan Addison. Um, but he knew this coming in. He knew the second he was going to get the USC, he was going to have the best roster. Like, I most coaches will get a handful of years, but when you come into this situation with these guys, it's just so hard to have such a long leash. There's no excuse. So he's got talent everywhere. He's got talent running back, got talent receiver. He has talent on defense too. So the like Alex said, this is it. Like you can't really, if you can't win with this team in front of you, then what team will you win with?
I think a lot of people are starting to really want to see it for Lincoln Riley because the way he left Oklahoma, USC put a big red carpet out for him to come here. He brought his prized possession and Caleb Williams. Everyone knew he's going to transfer to USC. He got everything he wanted, man. So this is the year to really put it up. So we got to see, man. Definitely going to be an interesting season for them. Let's get to other news, man. Georgia obviously named their starting quarterback this season. That is going to be Carson Beck. A lot of people opened their eyes and said, "Who the hell is this guy?" But I looked him up. Looks pretty solid. Arguably has the best roster pound for pound in college football. They're looking for the three-peat. Obviously, they won the last 2 years in a row. They have a generational tight end. I forgot his name, but Trent told me about him. What's his name? Brock Bowers, right? He's supposed to be one of the best tight ends in the last decade at least. I mean, he's legit. They have a great defensive line, great defense. It's just all around. But can Carson Beck be the guy that can bring over the top? And that is the ultimate wild card. What do you think about that, Trent?
I remember Beck in high school. It's funny in high school he wasn't the most highly touted guy. He was a 4-star. Obviously, he had offers from Georgia and all these schools, but he was on the top of the UM's board, so that's the reason why I remember him. But when he ended up choosing Georgia, nobody was really too hurt by it, just because he was just more of an unknown. He wasn't as popular as a recruit. But now here he is, the starting quarterback for the defending champs. I think that this is a little bit of a wild card because he has no real experience. I mean, he only has 58 passes in his career, and he's in his fourth year now. But if there's one team to do that on, it's UGA. I mean, he's got some of the best offensive linemen, best running backs, receivers, best defense, best coaches. So he's got talent up and down the board. Like you said, Brock Bowers is one of the best, if not the best, tight end of my generation. Just watching the guy play, and I mean, there's been a lot of good tight ends, but he's gonna have the tools around him to succeed. But now we just don't know. We're in the unknown right now with the first year starter, and this is the first time I think Georgia's had a problem like this since Stenson became quarterback.
Yeah,
I mean,
probably.
Who was Bennett? In a QB battle with a couple years ago when it was Bennett and
somebody good. He was like supposed to be a
he was
star.
good.
And then
Fromm, right? No, it was after Fromm. But that was the last time they had any real quarterback issue in Georgia. I mean, Bennett.
This guy, whoever he was, I think he beat out Justin Fields and made Justin Fields transfer to Ohio State.
That's right.
I don't remember his name. This is crazy.
But the point is, I don't know who it was. This is crazy. I lost my train of thought now because this is bugging the hell out of me.
Well, I'll find it for you. Wait.
I mean, look. Once Bennett took over, it was Fromm. It was definitely Fromm. Once Bennett took over, that was the end of that. I mean, they found their starter. You have no issues, and then you had Bennett for 2 or 3 years where you can keep running your offense through him. Now it's a brand new guy, never started before. And it kind of it leaves you a little bit of uncertainty that Georgia is not used to. They're going to be fine, but it's just not something they're used to.
Wasn't it JT Daniels?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think JT Daniels ran Fields out of town though, was it?
I think it was, man.
I think the quarterback was JT Daniels, and then he ended up transferring.
Yeah, he transferred somewhere else.
It's not important.
Yeah, regardless, yeah.
But I mean, UG is going to be fine. We're not worried about them. But it's a little different now because before last year, I mean, with Bennett back, there were stone cold favorites to win the title. At least in my eyes, I didn't see them losing any games. Now it's different because you have a brand new quarterback. You just don't know how he's going to perform. But he has a lot of pieces to pick him up. So they're still going to win a lot of games. It's just a little more uncertainty in terms of on a national championship scale. Yeah. If Carson Beck can produce it.
You said it perfectly, man. The room for error is always a lot bigger when you play at Georgia. So I expect him to play well, but I think there's a legitimate opportunity this year for a new team to win the national championship and ruin the three-peat, Alec.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, in general, it's hard to win back-to-back, let alone 3 years in a row. Fortunately, they have a pretty easy schedule this year.
Yeah, I saw that.
You play in the SEC East, and fortunately, other than Tennessee, there's not that one other team there that can compete with them. One of the issues, first of all, I don't expect them to win. I think it's like you can't bet on that, that they'll win 3 years in a row. And one of the reasons is because a lot of the players who played on these last 2 championship teams, they were a part of building this program into what it is now, and they got to start, and see the development and then come out on top. All those players, for the most part, are gone now. It's not to say that they don't have talent because they've been recruiting top 3 classes for the last 5 years. So they do have talent. The problem is these new players who are going to be coming in, they don't know losing. They haven't lost in 2 years. So if they do have a slip-up game or if they do get down, they haven't really been down and had to come back other than that Ohio State game last year.
And the Missouri game.
Yeah, that's right. That was one scare away at Missouri. And, they were able to pull that one out. I don't think that the quarterback is too much of a concern because, not to throw shade at Stetson Bennett, and I thought he did a great job in, being the piece that they needed. But yeah, I don't think you need that stud quarterback in the system. They have all this talent behind them. So it's like uh the quarterback who's coming in now, I don't think that his play is going to be like as dependent on
You
is my opinion.
you said it best, man. From everything I researched about Carson Beck and the decision from Kirby Smart was this guy doesn't take chances, man. He's a smart guy. He just does what he needs to do, man. He'll throw that read option 5 times if he has to.
Hold up. Stetson Bennett was disgusting last season. Like Stetson Bennett was very, very good. Like and playing at a very high level, like making terrific throws every game in, game out. So I don't want to hear any Bennett shade because he was actually very, very good. I don't know if they win the title without Bennett. Like they had an NFL team, but I don't know if they win without the play of Stetson Bennett. He was like phenomenal. And now this season they have Beck starting, but the even bigger issue is they have no veteran presence at all at quarterback because behind Carson Beck is Brock Vandegrift and Gunnar Stockton, who are both very, very highly touted high school quarterbacks, but they're young. They're redshirt sophomore and redshirt freshman. They have no experience at all. So if Beck either gets hurt or it doesn't perform, they're just bringing in another really young guy. So I think that is an issue that they're going to have to find a way to deal with if Beck does not live up to the hype or if he just doesn't perform on a high enough level. But we'll see. Again, they're still loaded. But Alec did make a good point. That a lot of these guys weren't around for those 2 years or they've never lost before. And it's going to be a little different. It's a little different with UGA this year.
Well, they probably run the table, maybe, yeah. But I will say that I think they are going to run the trouble in Tennessee. I believe that game is in Tennessee this year. And everything we'll talk about Tennessee later, but I think that's like the only game I could see them potentially struggling just because you don't know what you're going to get from your quarterback. But
Yeah,
my as I was talking to Trent earlier, my point really was when they get into the playoff, can you really trust this guy to win 2 huge games? That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and they'll find out very soon.
and I think that they should be favorites to win their division. But even coming out of the SEC, man, it's going to be tough to beat whoever wins the West.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously LSU is highly touted.
Yep. Like I said, we're going to talk about a lot of teams in future pods. There's only so much we could talk about. So we're going to wrap it up to the next team, and that is the jersey that Alec is wearing, FSU. He may be a little bit holding back because he doesn't want to jinx it, but I know deep down he thinks that FSU is going to have a big run this year. I do too. How can you not like FSU in terms of what they did last year? They were the best. I believe they had 4 losses last year, right?
He had 3 losses.
3 losses. They were the best 3-loss team in the country. I mean, those losses were close. But Jordan Travis, I think, is going to take a massive step this year. They have Jared Verse, one of the best defensive players in college football. I think they're going to have a huge year, Alec. What do you think, man?
Yeah, the expectations are high. I think rightfully so. I mean, we finished the season with 6 straight wins, coming off a 3-loss stretch. And we're going into year 4, and the usual trajectory for a new coach and a new system is you're going to lose big, you're going to lose small, you're going to win small, and then hopefully you win big in year 4. And that's what we're looking to do, and that's the reason why I think the expectation is so high. Also, we've mentioned this in the past. We have a lot of returning production, so pretty much our whole team is coming back, and all of our star players are out for preseason awards. So, I do expect us to take a shot at winning our conference this year. Preseason being in the top 10, I get it. The preseason rankings are only so accurate, and we finished around 13 last year. I could see us being anywhere between the 8 and 13 in those rankings. I was really happy that they had us up there. They did have us above Clemson, which I thought was interesting because we haven't beaten Clemson in 8 years. That they still have just as strong as a team, a program, and they kind of are coming in under the radar. Fortunate for them that a lot of the guys are on Florida State. We still have to get through them. And we play Clemson and LSU all in the first month. So a lot of what this team is going to be will be decided early on in the season. And it all comes down to preparation and our development since over the off season. We've made a lot of great acquisitions. We have players that are coming in that were transfers, or Destin Hill, wide receiver, who's been a freshman for 4 years because he hasn't been able to enroll in the school, and he finally got in. He's going to be, if not starting, have a major role. We have transfers that are going to come in and start right now. So we did fill in some of the holes. My biggest concern with the team is the defensive back room. We had a lot of problems defending the pass last year. Our front seven is pretty strong, and our pass rush is decent, but our D-backs were having real issues. We did bring in Patrick Surtain as our defensive backs coach this year. He's done a great job on the recruiting trail, and we're hoping that he can kind of develop these defensive backs into NFL caliber. So that's the big question for me this year, is the defensive back room. But overall, I think that, the expectation being high is justified. For me as a fan, I'm hoping that we could win 10 plus games this year. And, I'm really happy with the way that this team has developed over these 3 years. Mike Norvell came in and kind of instilled accountability and discipline from the very beginning. And it took a while to shake off and trim all the fat off of that. But it seems like we have a team who is, one unit and all bought into the process and the system that we have. And they all have their eye on the national championship. So I think that the mindset of the team is there. And if we do lose one of these big games, I think that we'll be able to respond. But as far as, expecting to be in the playoff or something like that, I'm not so sure yet, but I'm hoping that this is the year we could come back and take the crown in the ACC.
Well, I'll say this, man. The first week you got a big test, and if you win that game, I think you're right on your way. So
we'll talk more about that next week.
Yeah, we will.
Stay on that.
But Trent, go ahead, man. Want to piggyback off that?
Yeah, I mean, plenty to say about FSU. Alec talked about their returning production. They probably have the most returning production than anybody in the country. And on top of that, they have the best transfer class in the country. And that's not just because they got a lot of transfers. They got like high quality transfers at a lot of different positions that they're already good at too. So I am expecting a big season out of FSU. I think that there's one hump that they have to get over, which was their problem last year, is that they lost to the three best teams they played. They have to find a way to win those games this year. I think they're well equipped. They're well coached. Like I said, guys are coming back, so they can definitely do that this season. But that's what you have to look for. That they lost to Wake Forest, probably could have won that game. Lost to NC State, should have won that game, and then lost a close game to Clemson, which is like the ultimate obstacle, has been the ultimate obstacle for FSU for the last handful of years. So they're absolutely loaded for the most part. Alec mentioned they might be a little thin at DB, but they did just get Ventrell Cypress from UVA in the transfer portal. He's an NFL prospect. He was the best corner in the portal, probably a top 3 player in the portal. He's gonna do really great for FSU this year. And that's not something they had last year, that number 1 corner that you can kind of put on an island. But Alec talked about FSU being ranked over Clemson, and to some that might be surprising, but I'm not that surprised by it because Jordan Travis, and they have Klubnik, and Travis coming back, and I think is the difference. You have a guy that towards the end of the season, people thought he should have been, in New York as a Heisman finalist. That's how good Jordan Travis was last season. And to get that returning production back is so massive for any team. Whereas Clemson, Klubnik's, good. He's obviously highly touted out of high school, and, everyone knows how talented he is, but didn't have the season that Travis had last season, mainly because of DJ was at Clemson, and it was a roller coaster, as we all know, at Clemson last season. But I think Jordan Travis is the reason why FSU is what it is right now. He's dynamic. He can run. He can throw. He makes good decisions. He's an incredibly improved player, compared to when he came in, a few years ago from Louisville. So I like FSU at least winning 10 games this year. I think that's all FSU fans' hopes. I think they're going to accomplish that this season. I think it's just a matter of, can they just win that big game, whether it's Clemson, whether it's the ACC championship. I think it's the ACC championship. They're going to win, but if they can get past Clemson, win their division, I like FSU a lot to win the conference and potentially make the playoff.
Yeah. Yep. Well said, guys. Let's ship over to the other side of the state and talk about the University of Miami for a second. Yeah, man, those Canes. I sent you guys a picture a week ago about the wins and losses, and I have a hard time seeing them win more than 6 games. I'm just being brutally honest. Obviously, I want them to do well, but it's kind of hard to have some confidence after what happened last season. They had a couple transfers come in, but Trent said it best, and Alec mentioned it last year too. Until Mario Cristobal really gives up the reins to someone else offensively, I just don't see them making a big stride this year. Tyler Van Dyke was supposed to be a projected first-round quarterback and ultimately stayed for another year. There were some Alabama rumors, but ultimately he stayed. And Trent, you're as big a fan as I know as any other person. And what do you think about UM, man?
Yeah, so I made the grave mistake of marking UM down for 10 wins last season. I'm not going to be doing that this year. Yeah, last year was another disappointment. There's so much you could say about the personnel, the staff, Mario, whatever, but it was a full collapse, top to bottom. Hence why he fired both his coordinators. Well, I guess fired one, the other one left Alabama. But I've heard a lot of things in the offseason. I've heard that the staff was relatively toxic. Players didn't want to play for the staff. It just wasn't a good combination. These new coordinators came in. They kind of added a little more life to the team. The offense is a little more explosive, if you want to call it. But I don't buy that anymore. As a fan of this team for as many years as I have, I just don't buy it anymore. They have to show me. So, yeah, they got guys in the portal. They got some good freshmen that are going to start day one that people are excited to see. But at the end of the day, Mario's going to have to put a product on the field to sell his fan base back. And look, I'll be there for the Miami of Ohio game next week. I have no idea what to expect, which is absolutely crazy to say. I don't know if these guys are going to show up and they're going to be able to score 30 points on the Miami Redhawks, or if it's going to be a dogfight and, it's going to be a 14-14 game. So it's a wait and see. Of course, there's guys I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see how Shannon Dawson comes in and controls this new offense, or I guess it's Mario's offense. But I'm excited to see Van Dyke with a new coordinator, see how he plays and how he makes his decisions. And there's a lot of good true freshmen. Francis Maigoa, the 5-star offensive lineman that came in. I'm expecting a much improved offensive line. Javion Cohen from Alabama to transfer, guard. But at the end of the day, they got to put product on the field. They have to score points. They were unable to score points last season at all. They had a game against Virginia where they did not score a touchdown and they won the game. Don't ask me how. But that just can't happen this year. And if it does, the red flags will officially, like the bright red flags will officially be waved with Mario in this program. So I'm not expecting them to win. I'm not even expecting them to win 8 games, but I'm expecting them to show me something, which they were unable to do last season in any capacity.
Yeah.
They're not going to beat FSU this year. We'll go more in depth when that week comes around. But, I'm expecting them to fight at least. And FSU came into our building last season and pulled our pants down and embarrassed us. So it was no competition. That's not something you do in a rivalry game like that, no matter how good FSU is. They were better than us for sure, but to get embarrassed like that, there's no excuse. So I just need them to show me some improvement, some organization, some chemistry, from both players and staff. So we'll see how it goes. I'm not expecting very big things out of Miami this season, but I'm expecting at least some improvement under Mario.
You said it best, man. I think you speak for 95% of Canes fans, and you definitely hit one great point. People think you might be sarcastic, but the first week is legitimately concerning. I do think they're going to win, but by how much is really the question. So, Alec, anything you want to go off what Trent said?
Yeah, well, I can provide an outside perspective. I do follow Miami. Um, you know, the second closest team that I follow in college football. So I watch all their games. I got to see, everything that went down last year. Which what we all saw was just a team experiencing in first year woes with a new head coach and coming off of a kind of disappointing previous coach, and they were hoping to have some big changes soon, and that wasn't the case. A lot of common themes from last year. But one of the main things I remember was drop passes, kind of blown plays downfield on the defensive side, and maybe some stupid penalties. These are common mistakes of teams that are inexperienced, undisciplined, and it's hard to establish that in the first year for any head coach. I saw it with Willie Taggart. I saw it with Mike Norvell. They both had terrible first years. And what we did see after that was slight improvement with Norvell, and I think that trajectory is kind of built up until where we are now. I think Mario is kind of more of a disciplined guy and an accountability guy. It may have just shocked the players a little bit, his culture that he tried to instill right off the bat, and that you had some issues with conformity. So this will be Tyler Van Dyke's third offensive coordinator in 3 years. Third, even though a lot of players left and they did bring in new players, a lot of these players on this offense, it's a new system again. And you got to hope that it works out, because you don't want to have to get another coordinator next year, because you're going to be in the same situation. But I do expect them to improve. I think that it's great that a lot of fans have a little bit more of a leveled expectation for this year, and what you really should be looking for, and I think that they will exceed this personally. But what you really need is to make a bowl game this year, and beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. And if you could win a couple other big games that you're not supposed to win, then that's huge improvement, in my opinion. But you got to make a bowl game this year, and you got to hopefully show a little bit of improvement when it comes to discipline, and a little bit better responding to down times, whether being down in a game and not giving up in some situations they may have last year. So I do believe that the Mario Cristobal tenure will work out eventually. They have him signed for 10 years, and at some point within these next 10 years, I'm sure that they'll put a good team together. But it's not going to happen overnight. And last year was a big shock. I came in with, like I said, lower expectations than the average UM fan last year, and they didn't even meet my expectations. So it was a rough year, and it was a good wake-up call for the fan base, the entire team, coaches, players, and level your head out and get your eyes on what the prize is, which is building step by step, no matter how long it might take. So I don't think they'll have a problem with Miami, Ohio. We'll talk about it next week more. But there's some big games I'm sure that they're going to have to play on their schedule, other than the FSU game, and in the ACC Coastal. There's some decent teams. Miami's really struggled with North Carolina in recent years, regardless of who the coach was. And obviously Duke's got a great quarterback, and they had a good year last year in Mike Elko's first year. So they're going to have some tough games, and if they can win a couple of those games that they wouldn't have won last year, that's going to be great. But I think that, yeah, you're looking at like 7 wins, 6 on the downside, 8 on the upside. And if you can fall in that range, you can expect to go even higher next year.
Yep.
But you can make that jump. It's possible. You get a big win against A&M, And you know how this Miami culture and team works. You get on a roll and you just keep rolling after a big win. So that'll be
Trent,
the real test for this season.
Trent, I will make the case, just playing devil's advocate here, but let's say I think we can all agree Tyler Van Dyke's talented. I mean, the guy was a projected first round pick last year. He stayed. Granted, he had some terrible luck too. Just not a great situation last year. But this is a guy who can carry a team if he wants. Let's Alex, right? Let's say they do beat A&M, man. Let's say they get momentum and they ride a train. They're not going to obviously win out. They're not going to win, I think, more than 8 or 9 games, but I think there's a chance they can make a small run in the beginning of the year. I don't know. I wouldn't rule it out. So you
I don't
never
want
know,
to rule that
man.
out either. I mean, again, I don't think A&M is the greatest team.
Exactly.
They're a very beatable team,
They have,
but it's more that they have a lot to prove. They have talent on paper. Um, Last season, Van Dyke his first year with Rhett Lashley as the coordinator. Obviously got the reason why he's a household name for college football. In the first place, he played amazing. Um, the offense was just electric, big play after big play. Um, and then when Gaddis came in last year, it was like a completely different player. He was missing throws, guys weren't getting open. Um, I've heard that there was a little bit of a disconnect between Van Dyke and Gaddis, and also Frank Ponce, who was the quarterback coach at the time, who's also now been let go. But Gaddis was telling him one thing, Ponce was telling him another thing. So I'm going to go ahead and give for that first year, give him the benefit of the doubt that there was a disconnect and maybe an issue between communication with the staff and the players, or specifically Van Dyke. Now Dawson's the offensive coordinator. He's also the quarterback coach. That's not an excuse anymore. So I expect Van Dyke to I don't want to say to look like year one Van Dyke, because that was just a very, very special season for him. But he's got to show me something. He didn't show me anything last season. I think he had one big game. He had one good game. It might have been against North Carolina. But other than that, it was just a complete disaster up until the point he got hurt. So yeah, obviously Van Dyke has the talent. There's a lot of guys on the roster that have plenty of talent on both sides of the ball that can win you games. But as we all know, it's more than that. So they just got to show me. I
yeah.
have no confidence after last season. They have to put that confidence back in me. They have to instill that back in me, and show me something against, at the very least, Miami, Ohio, that these guys can run a competent offense and put points
Yeah.
on the board.
All right. Well said on UM, guys. Let's get to the last Florida team that a lot of people care about. That is the Florida Gators. And this morning and last week, I looked at their schedule. I wanted to double check just to be sure I'm confident. And I can legitimately say I would be very surprised if they won more than 3 games. I think they're going to be 3-7 or whatever it is. This is going to be, I think, one of the worst seasons that Florida's going to have in a long time. I just don't have any hope for them. I personally don't think I'm being crazy, but maybe you might think, Alec. I mean, you went to school there recently. You obviously have friends that went there. What are you hearing, and what do your friends say about UF and their expectations this season? What do you think they're going to do?
It sounds a little gloomy, from what I hear from my UF friends and family. I think that they don't have much of an expectation either. I think that they are getting a lot of shade from the media in general. I saw on ESPN that one of their guys expects them to win 4 games. It's possible that they can win any game at home that they play. In my opinion, they have one of the best atmospheres, and it really is.
I agree
Uh,
with that.
it really is a game changer. They beat Utah last year when they really didn't have as good of a team as Utah, but Utah's not used to playing in the swamp, and I think that was a big difference in this game. They have an insanely hard schedule this year. They have to play Tennessee, Georgia, Florida State. I don't have the schedule in front of me now, but LSU.
A lot
These
of
are
ranked, yeah,
all 4 of those teams they have to play every year. And next year they have to play those 4 teams on top of Miami and UCF, I believe, as well. So next year is going to be even tougher for them. But it was also Napier's first year, and I think they would not have won as many games if they didn't have Anthony Richardson. So the question is, should they have been a 4-8 team without AR potentially, and maybe they wouldn't have made a bowl game. They played embarrassing in their bowl game last year, and I don't think Richardson played, but regardless, that was an outlook of what the team is. This year they have Grant Mertz, and you know,
Who
some
I'm a
people
fan of, by the way. I think he's better than people think.
some people think it may be Mertz mania in Gainesville, but I don't I see that. I didn't really see it from him. I think this is the guy who got Paul Chryst fired in Wisconsin, and him coming him coming to UF is a testament, I believe, to Billy Napier and his ability to sell this program to quarterbacks. I mean, there were plenty of great quarterbacks in this transfer portal this year that he could have gotten. Obviously he missed out on Jaden Rashada in this recruiting class, who was just announced as a starter at Arizona State. So he's going to start as a true freshman. And this guy could have came in and been their quarterback this year. Um, I don't think that Napier was able to go and sell the program to Sam Hartman or some of these other the guy from Kentucky, Devin Leary, a couple of these other guys who went to these other programs that, in my opinion, are a lower job than they could have gotten in UF. So I'm concerned there. They lost a lot of their offensive line, and they still have some young running backs. They have Trevor Etienne, Travis's little brother, and they got what I forgot his name, but the guy who transferred from Louisiana when Napier came, he had an amazing year last year as a running back. I think that their offense is going to be 60 to 65% run, and if they could make something happen there, then Mertz can, make some short passes here and there, but he's not going to be making plays like AR was. So, I don't know. I think that, they should be happy to make a bowl game as well this year, but they have a chance to do a little bit better. You were talking about Tennessee and their high expectations this year. Um, I'm not going to say that they won't do well, but I don't know if they'll have as good of a year as they did last year. And they go into the swamp early on. I'm going to that game. I'll be there actually, and I could see Florida, like I said at the beginning, pulling out a surprise win there because they have the swamp game at night. And if they could be in the game, they could totally pull that one out, in my opinion. So if they can win that game, then maybe they could roll it into something. But it's going to be hard for me to expect a lot out of the Gators this year.
Yeah. Well said, man. I have a lot to say about Tennessee, but I'll bring it up next time. But yeah, Trent, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I really think that 6 wins is probably their ceiling, maybe 7. But I mean, they just have a tough schedule. Like Alex said, a lot of guys are not returning. Their offensive line was probably one of their stronger parts of their team last season. They had guys leave. I know they have a couple returning starters that are pretty good, but it won't be the same. And then obviously their biggest loss, arguably, which you could say what you want about the guy, but Anthony Richardson was their starter last year, and he was a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. And even with him, they were still not a very attractive football team. And now you bring in your star transfer, Graham Mertz, who I can't think of a
Mertz mania.
like I can't think of a least attractive transfer to bring in to be your starting quarterback. You could talk about the Rashada deal. That was a whole NIL issue that's a whole nother problem that Florida has going on with their program. But, they were unable to get Rashada. I think if they had Rashada, we might be having a different conversation right now. But Mertz says you're starting quarterback with a lot of guys leaving, I think is a recipe for disaster, especially with the schedule that they have. I mean, I was just looking at it. To end the season by itself, they have
it's brutal, man. It's brutal.
They had, Florida State was on there, LSU was on there, Missouri, who's no cakewalk, is on there.
Georgia,
Kentucky. They've lost to Kentucky.
They got Kentucky. They have Georgia. They have to play Utah again, like Alex said. Oh, Utah is in Utah, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an out. That's
they're not winning that game. So
certified
they're
out.
going to start their season off in Utah. They're going to lose that game. Luckily for them, they play Charlotte after that.
That's one of the wins I have for them.
But right after Charlotte, they go right into Kentucky, it's in Kentucky. Like it's not easy. Then they have Vanderbilt, probably win that game, and then at South Carolina, then Georgia, then Arkansas, LSU, Missouri, Florida State. It's just
what a brutal schedule, man.
It is impossible for them, and I mean, obviously those teams are beat. Some of those teams are beatable. We like Arkansas. We always talk about Arkansas this pod. Missouri, those are very beatable teams, but Florida, how can you pick Florida in those games just because, Graham Mertz, man, Graham Mertz.
Yeah, the thing is that Napier is young. This is his first big job, and after this past year, I think his seat is a little hot.
I was just about to ask that, Alec. Listen,
hold on. I like Napier. I actually don't think Napier.
No,
I think Napier actually might be the guy for this job. However, I don't know how you can expect this guy to succeed when.
What I was going to say was I like him too. And when they hired him, I thought it was a great hire. They got one of the best up and coming coaches that were in the pool when they did get him. He came in from the very beginning in his opening press conference and preached for patience and said that this is going to take time. He hired a lot of staff, got a lot of fundraising to hire. I think they have the most assistants or up there in college football up there with like Nick Saban level personnel on their staff. And his whole thing is he has his own system for analyzing and finding talent and his own player development. And it's a little bit, I guess maybe it's a little bit of a slower process, but he preached for patience when he came in. So for me, I think it would be unfair to cut him off after 2 years. The problem is, and for those people who watched the Urban Meyer documentary that's on Netflix about UF, it's like it's the Florida Gators. They play in the SEC. They have a tradition and a history of competing at the highest level in the highest conference in college football, and only up to there's a limit on the amount that any SEC fan base will take. And before, they totally give up and want a new coach. And whereas, and Miami and FSU are similar where there's a high demand for success, but at a smaller school, you could maybe get away with 2 really rough first years. But if you don't see a decent amount of progress this year, there's going to be people calling for his head, regardless of if it's justified or not, because you can't be bottom of the barrel in the SEC East for 2 years in a row. And the real problem with it is that Napier has been recruiting at like an elite level. I mean, other than being able to lock in a quarterback, he's bringing in a really strong class, maybe, a great class last year, but a really strong class moving into this year. And if they can't win games this season, then they're not going to finish with a good class. All these players are going to run elsewhere. So you need to win, and you need to win now to bring premier talent to your school in the SEC over all the other schools. So he's at a disadvantage than compared to being at a school in another conference where maybe there would be a little bit more lenience.
I agree, man. I think if he was at a smaller school, I think there'd be a lot more patience. But you're talking about UF, man, and he signed a 7-year, $58 million deal. The first year didn't go so great, and Trent said it. He had a top 5 pick in Anthony Richardson, and they only won 4 games.
I think they won 6, but
6. Sorry, my bad. Yeah.
So I agree with Alec in the sense that yes, in the SEC, it's Florida. There's more pressure than he would be if he were at another school. But when you put things in perspective, Napier comes in year 1. He has Anthony Richardson. He leaves after 1 year, becomes a top 5 draft pick. Now he's out of options at quarterback. He was unable to land his QB in Rashada, so they got left to the transfer market, and they got the bottom of the barrel, Graham Mertz. You could say it's Napier's fault, whatever, but it's hard for a guy in his second year who never had any sort of QB depth outside of Richardson to come in and just start succeeding right away. He has, as of now, DJ Lagway committed for next season, who's a 5-star quarterback, another huge quarterback prospect. If he ends up signing, that's their quarterback of the future automatically and a day one starter in 2024. And to me, that's when the clock starts ticking. That's his guy, his quarterback that he brings in. He can develop him and do whatever. But his first 2 years, he has a quarterback he inherited in AR, who's now gone, and then left with Graham Mertz. It's very hard to judge the guy after those first 2 years when it's just not fair at all and not justified.
I agree.
Especially when your main position, the most important position, there's just nothing there. It's not necessarily his fault. So, if he were not to if he doesn't bring in any quarterback for the 2024, Lagaway, flips, go somewhere else, or he's not unable to bring in a transfer to replace Mertz, then yes, he absolutely is responsible for that. And then the seat would be hot in my eyes. But if he does bring in Lagaway and he's able to replenish that quarterback position group, then is when you can start to evaluate Napier and what his success will be at Florida. But as of right now, I just don't think it's a good bookmark.
I agree with both of you. I just think UF fans are gonna have to be patient. I would be very surprised if he gets fired at the end of the year. So we'll see, man. Also, Florida has a good track record of keeping coaches, so I'd be surprised. All right, let's obviously there's 1,000 teams we can talk about. When the games come out next week, we'll talk about a lot more of those teams, but we're gonna give our awards and predictions for the college football playoff. What do you guys want to start with first, the Heisman, or you want to talk about the college football playoff, our picks? Let's do the picks.
All right.
Trent, I'll let you go first, man.
Let me look at my.
Or Alec, I'll let you go first.
Okay, so
any order, doesn't matter.
This is for college football playoff?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Final Four. I mean, you gotta assume one SEC team at least. You gotta assume that the winner of Ohio State, Michigan is going to be in there. You gotta put USC in there. Like, you really have to if you're a betting person. And who that other team is going to be, I don't know. I was really excited about what Notre Dame may be able to pull off this year, but man, they have such a tough schedule. I don't see them winning all those games, and unless they go 11-1 or undefeated, I don't know if they get in. With 2 losses, probably not. But coming out of the SEC, obviously the big 4 teams that are going to have a shot at it are Georgia, Bama, LSU, Tennessee, I guess. LSU is the team that everyone is really excited about moving into this year. Obviously, it's tough for any team to play in the SEC, but they have a lot of returning talent as well. Other than losing their top, was it Malik Neighbors, or maybe it was the other receiver, whoever the guy was, Keyshawn Butte, he left, but they still have Jaden Daniels coming back, who transferred to LSU with the intention of competing for a national championship. Brian Kelly came in his first year, and they made it to the SEC championship. They won the SEC West, and they just ran into Georgia, and I don't think they were there yet. But I don't know if I'm going to pick LSU. But Brian Kelly, as much as I've had problems with him in the past, he really is one of the better coaches in college football. He's been successful at multiple schools. His process has been proven. They win 10 games every year, probably for the last 10 years he's been coaching. So for me, I can't see it not being Georgia because they have such an easy schedule. Even if they were to win out and lose the SEC championship, they could probably still get in depending on their other wins. So I'm going to pick Georgia out of SEC. I think I'm going to pick Ohio State over Michigan this year. And I'll have them in, I guess this isn't in any order, but Georgia, Ohio State, USC, and then the 4th team would also come out of the Pac-12. It would probably be.
What about Roll Tide?
Yeah, I mean, it could be the other team in the SEC championship. So if it were to be another team, I think I'm picking LSU over Alabama because of their quarterback situation. And I think they'll be just as elite on the defensive side. They had a really good defense last year. So that's not to throw shade at Bama because I do think that eventually they're going to be back there and Saban's going to win one or two or three before he's out. So, but maybe that fourth team, I'll put LSU in there.
All right. Trent, you want to go next?
Sure.
All right.
So I think the formula always is you got to think, all right, Georgia or Alabama. I'm going to go with Georgia because, as Alec mentioned, the schedule is very easy. But also, I think Alabama is in a more difficult quarterback situation than Georgia is. Like I think the Notre Dame Pine going to be Pine's their starter, right?
I don't think it's Pine or maybe it is, but they have Tommy Reese as their OC.
He's their
So
OC now. Yeah, I mean the coaching is good, but I mean in terms of personnel, in the quarterback position is it's
they
just like
haven't announced yet, is my understanding.
so
It's
even more uncertainty. So I'm gonna pick Georgia over Alabama for that reason and for the schedule reason. Um, I'm gonna pick Michigan over Ohio State because of the returners, especially Blake Corum coming back from Michigan. I think Michigan has their number right now as well. Um, so I
the
like
Notre
Georgia.
Dame quarterback was Buckner, and right now Tyler
Uh-huh.
Buckner, but it's him and Jalen Milroe, and I think it'll
Milroe.
probably be Milroe.
I like Georgia. I like Michigan. Um, I think it's going to be two SEC schools because of how loaded the conference is this year, and I think the second team is going to be Tennessee. Um,
Wow, you're Joel Milton buying the hype.
I think that they're going to have a similar year to what they had last year. The thing is, like, there's a lot of hype around Milton, and I don't know if I buy it yet.
Apparently, he's like the next greatest thing, man.
So he has the biggest arm, which I don't doubt. I'm sure he can throw 80 yards. The thing is, he either lives up to the hype, or worst case, they bring in Nico. I'm not even going to begin to pronounce his last name, but he was my favorite quarterback in the freshman class. I liked him more than Archie, and I think he can actually be a day one starter. I think he would be the day one starter if they didn't have Milton. But I think Tennessee, with that coaching staff, is still going to have a super high powered offense. Um, and I think they're kind of at an advantage being in the same division as UGA because they can lose to UGA. They won't have to play in the SEC championship. That could be their only loss, and they could just sit and wait. And that usually benefits those teams. That team will usually make it over the team that lost in the SEC championship. Um, so I like Tennessee for that reason. And my fourth team, Alec is not gonna like it. Florida State.
Wow,
He's not gonna like it.
I
But I
love
think
it.
Florida
I love
State,
it.
if they can just beat Clemson and win the ACC, they will have a spot.
All right, here's my thinking. I have Georgia getting in. I have them going undefeated. Now, whoever plays Georgia in the SEC championship game is going to have one loss, in my opinion, and I think they're going to lose to Georgia again and have two losses. That's why I think there's going to be one SEC team. So I have Georgia, and for that reasoning, I have FSU sneaking in and getting in as well. I think they're gonna. I think there's a real chance they can run the table. I believe they're. I'm just not a big Jaden Daniels fan. I think they're gonna do it, man. Number three, I have Ohio State beating Michigan, so I have Ohio State getting in. And number four, this is probably gonna surprise both of you. I just am a huge believer of this team. I think second year, I think the defense is going to shape up. People forget they almost made the playoff last year. They just got out. That is Oregon. I think they're going to make the playoff. I'm a huge believer in Bo Nix this year.
Thought you were gonna say Washington State.
No, no, no. I Dan Lanning. I'm a believer in Dan Lanning, man.
Yeah, I like Oregon.
Got the Georgia blood. Bo Nix played awesome at the end of the year. I believe they're going to carry that momentum, and I believe they're going to beat USC when they play them this year, and I believe they're going to get in. Those are my
The
four.
reason why I hold back with Oregon, even though I like Lanning, I like Nix, and I like some of the talent on that team, is because the Pac-12 this year is not exactly a cakewalk. They have to go through Utah, they have to go through Washington, they have to go through USC. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy to win that conference for any team, and that's maybe why I didn't have a Pac-12 team in my four. Um, USC, all four of those teams can win the conference. USC can win, Washington, Oregon, Utah. All four of those teams are candidates to win that conference. They're all pretty good teams. Um, but it could just be a dogfight in that conference. They could all have two losses, one loss,
Yeah, that's true as well.
each other. So because of that, and because of the weakness of the ACC, outside of Florida State and Clemson. That's why I picked Florida State.
Alec, I will say this, man. I really believe that whoever plays at Georgia in the SEC championship, and why I have only one team going out, is because whoever plays Georgia, I think is going to have one loss, and they're going to lose to them a championship game, which means they'll have two. And I just don't see a two-loss team getting in.
Yeah, I could see that happening. And then about the FSU being in there, it's like I could see it happening too. But obviously, we'd have to win our conference. And we would play Clemson twice in theory. If we lose to them once, we could still beat them in the ACC championship. But that's it. I mean, we would really only get in with one loss, like you're saying. Um, you know, it's so hard for me to predict that we won't have a slip up game where we lose to like a Pittsburgh or another team that's solid that maybe we overlook. Um, it's just you can't expect to win every game that you're favored in. And at least my experience as a fan. So maybe that's why I'm a little bit more hesitant. Obviously, this is a big year for us where we're going to have a lot of people going to the draft. So it would have to be this year. Um, I'm just not going to say it. I just can't say it.
Yeah. Let me ask you guys this question before we get to our Heisman pick, and that's it. Who do you think has the best chance to be like a TCU team this year? Just a big sleeper, rises all the way to the top, and is just somehow there.
Well, TCU wasn't even ranked, so like it's just so hard to.
Or just even a ranked team that's getting a little bit
Right.
slept on. I hate to
It
say
would
slept on.
probably be a team out of the Big 12. I mean, like it could be a Baylor or something like that, or a Kansas State. Like I think they're gonna
I
have
mean, look,
I'm
don't
gonna
sleep
be.
on like Tulane.
I was gonna. I was gonna say this. I think Ole Miss can make a run this year.
no
I would
shot.
would not be surprised.
Of all the teams, just looking at the top 25, the team in terms of being a sleeper that I like is Tulane. We want to talk about a program that's thriving right now.
It's unbelievable, man. Who would have ever thought
Obviously,
that?
they'd be like the Boise State back when Boise State was making,
Kellen Moore days.
New Year's Six bowls, but the weaker schedule. But you never know. If Tulane goes 12-0, it's hard. You just never know. They could absolutely get in, sneak in over a one-loss team or one-loss SEC team.
Who are they playing? Like it's similar to last year where unless they have big games on their schedule, I don't.
Did Tulane finish 12-0 last year though? I don't think so.
I think maybe, or if it was like one loss, maybe, but like they
They had one
lost
loss.
maybe in their conference championship or something, but they still went to a bowl and beat USC. So I'm
Yeah,
not saying
they
not
finished
saying
12.
they
They
can't
finished 12-2 last year.
Oh, dude. I think. What about Totally forgot about them. What about Washington? Michael Penix.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't call them a sleeper because they're ranked decently high.
Yeah,
Top
they
10,
are.
I think.
I
Totally
think
forgot about them.
they're 10. They're top 10 team. But
That's
yeah, but that goes back to what I'm saying about the Pac-12. Like, it's not going to be easy for any team on the
yeah.
Pac-12. Like, there's a lot of talented teams and good teams in the Pac-12. It might be a little more top heavy. You can go ahead and say Colorado's a sleeper. I don't know how good they'll be this year though. But
Wouldn't that be something, man? That'd be funny.
I would. I don't know even what I don't even know what to say about that. But
That would be nuts.
All right, guys.
you know,
Yeah, we'll leave it for next week. Let's do our last one. I don't think we need to go over the receiver award. I think we all agree it's going to be Marvin Harrison.
I mean, he could win the Heisman.
Yeah, that's true. Alec, I'll give you first dibs, man. Who do you think is going to win the Heisman this year?
It's like if FSU goes undefeated. So here's my thing about Heisman Trophy. It's the quarterback usually, but the best player on the best team, even if it's not the best player in the country.
I mean, Charles Woodson was the last guy who was not a
Well,
quarterback. I want to correct.
it's not all the time.
No. He's the last defensive player. Only
like,
defensive player.
For
That's
example,
right.
like Caleb Williams won the Heisman last year. He was clearly better than any other quarterback, and it's really easy to pick the quarterback for a Heisman Trophy. I think as it stood in the preseason, I don't know if it's still the case, but I think Jordan Travis was like number 2 or 3 in the Heisman odds. But again, in order to do that, we have to be in the playoff even if he's playing amazing all year and he's the best, flashiest player. It's like you could do it if you're Lamar Jackson, I guess, where your team's not in the playoff. But I think he'll be up there. If he plays his cards right, he'll probably be in New York if he plays like he did last year. But I can't say that Caleb Williams would win again, even though he's probably going to be the best quarterback.
It's so hard to do it twice.
JT Daniels, I don't think so. Well, since I didn't put FSU in my playoff, I can't really pick Jay Trevor. I would, but Penix maybe, but I don't think they'll win enough games. Let's see here. Drake May, I don't think so.
That's another sleeper team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, shit.
It's hard, man.
Look, here's the thing.
How about Bo Nix? I'll go Bo Nix.
Going to Heisman?
Yeah. Bo Bag.
Here's the thing. Like, Caleb is head over heels better still. Like, I know it's difficult to win 2 in a row, and it has happened in some time, but it's hard not to pick him. I'm going to pick him to win. I think Caleb will win again. He's just that much better, and he's on a good team. He's going to win a lot of games. He's going to get a lot of attention. I think he'll win again if he stays healthy. But I'll give you my invites, my New York invites as well. I think Caleb's going to win. I think Jordan Travis will be in New York. I think Sam Hartman will be in New York. And I think Marvin Harrison will be in New York.
That's good.
All right. I do have them getting to the SEC championship game, and I do have them losing. But how the hell can you not pick Joe Milton? I'm buying the hype, man.
To win the Heisman?
Yeah. Everything I've seen on tape and everything I've heard, I'm excited as hell to watch him play. I think he's got all the physical attributes. I think, like I said, you got to be really good. Sometimes you don't have to make the championship games. We saw last year. But, man, if he can get to the SEC championship, which I think there's a real shot they can, he's my Heisman pick. So I'm going Milton.
So you better throw some bread down because Marvin Harrison has better odds to win the Heisman than Joe Milton.
Man, yeah. Maybe I will. But and Harrison is obviously one of the greatest receiving prospects we've seen in a long time. I just find it so hard for him to be out of quarterback.
He's plus 2,000. He's at the bottom of the list.
So that's my pick, man. I really believe that Joe Milton has a chance.
That's a sleeper pick. And I mean, look, everybody loves the big arm, but that does not tell the story. I mean, I'm sure that Milton can throw the ball 80, 85 yards, probably on his knees, but you got to be cautious sometimes, and all the hype that sometimes doesn't add up. But we'll see. I mean, he could be great. I don't know.
If I was a betting man, I might as well put that on the odds.
2,500.
It's going to be hard not to pick Caleb, man. You're right.
It's hard not to pick Caleb.
It's never happened other than a boy, whatever his name is.
Archie.
Yeah, Archie Griffin. But my boy, like I said, it's the best player on the best team, and they are supposed to be there.
If they win the games, they're supposed to.
All the stars are aligned, and maybe they do. I don't know if they play Oregon in the regular season or if they're in different divisions. I do agree with what you're saying, Robert, that they're going to have a tough one getting through there. Because Oregon is obviously the closest thing to an SEC model that you find in that conference, but I think I want to change my pick to Caleb. Like I just.
Did you see who's second? You see who's second in odds? The second highest odds?
Drake May, maybe.
No, Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels, yeah.
I just listen.
That's mind-boggling.
I'm going to be honest.
If he make a run, then he can. It's just like you don't have to be like a stud. Like you don't have to be a pro quarterback to win the Heisman.
Gonna be honest, 100%. I am just not a Jaden Daniels fan, man. I didn't see it last year. I don't see why the hype is so big this year. I know they have their big shiny new coach, but I don't know. We'll see, man. I'd be very surprised to see that.
Yeah, I'm not bought into Jaden Daniels either.
All right, guys. Like always, this is fun. We finally have college football. Next week we have week 1. Can't wait. We'll be back to give our picks and what's going on. And then I believe probably week 8, we'll start talking college football, playoff scenarios. Last year was an awesome ride. It was wild. so many twists and turns. Hopefully, have that again this year.
I'm certain of it.
Yep.
Certain.
All right.